The webinar has started, my friends.
Webinar has begun. We are at 2:59, so we're going to give people a minute to join. Come in, get relaxed, get your coffee, your beverage, or maybe a little bit of hydration, whatever you need to be comfortable, and we will be ready for you in 1 minute.
We welcome you to our virtual palace. That is now a
Yes.
webinar for all the ages. And webinar number 2, by the way, as well.
Webinar number 2.
Second live.
We are building momentum. We're going to build a wave and ride it just like these prime protagonists we're going to talk about in a minute.
It's good alliteration.
I'd love if I could see the different beverages that were being consumed, so I could have a nice coffee, nice. I want to see if anyone's got an energy drink in their hand for this one.
In Europe, yes. I think I'd be a little alarmed if it was in the US, if they were 10 a.m. consuming energy drinks.
I don't know. The consumption over here seems to be all day long. Monster, cans of Monster all day long. Okay, I think we're going to get stuck into this. Be cognizant of your time. We thank you for joining us. Welcome to the second Ever Wonder webinar. Today we're looking at how big brands identify and protect their blind spots. It's a big topic, so the way we're going to look at it is through the lens of the rise and fall of Prime Energy. Now, Prime Hydration, LLC, which the maker of Prime Energy, this is an ongoing saga. This is a tale that isn't over, but we are going to give you the story so far, what we see as some blind spots that Prime didn't see in their growth. And also, we're going to open it up then, Prime's success or failure. I'm Conor Ebbs. I'm the Director of Digital Marketing here at Everwonder, and I'm joined today by our founder and principal, Brian Senna. Say hello, sir.
Hi there. So happy to be here.
So, what are we going to cover today? I'm going to give you a rundown of the story of Prime Energy. For those of you that don't know the story, we'll get it right from the genesis of Prime all the way up to today and up to the most recent news you might have seen about Prime with lawsuits in the press. I'm going to get you right from the genesis up to here. Brian is going to cover how we find brand blind spots in general across branding, and then covering how Prime didn't see certain blind spots in their growth. Then we're going to look at success or failure, have a bit of a conversation around that, and open it up to you to see what do you think about this story? Are they a success? Are they a failure? Are they down and out? I'm going to be using a lot of boxing terms in this because this relates directly to the protagonists of Prime. So let's get stuck in. Now, everybody has somebody in their life that's somewhat of a perfect antagonist. The two protagonists of this story, Logan Paul and KSI, otherwise known as JJ Olatunji, are two social media megastars. Both of these guys have built up over a long time, 10 to 15 years, even longer for Logan Paul, huge followings across social media. Logan Paul starting with Vine when he was a kid, building Vine videos, getting huge popularity in 2013 and moving across to YouTube, and grafting and building a huge following and influence. Over the other side of the pond in the UK, KSI, who was born in London, lived in Watford, he was building YouTube videos all about playing FIFA. This is a phenomenon I don't understand, but gamers are crazy about watching people playing gaming. He used to play FIFA soccer, and he built up a massive following that way. People were watching his videos. He started to record music. He started to build influence. These two guys were running in parallel tracks, building up these empires of influence on social media. And then they got on each other's radar. And here the protagonists became antagonists. So if you think back to that person that might be in a professional or personal context, this is someone that you love to hate. Maybe it's someone that you grew up with. Maybe it's someone who's in a similar industry. Maybe it's a family member in a similar industry. You're looking across at them and you're thinking, they really grind my gears. And you don't know why, but probably one of the reasons is you probably have things in common. There's something they do that just doesn't sit right with you because maybe it's something you don't do well or something you want to do better. Well, that's what happened with these guys. Around 2017, they came on each other's radars, these two rising stars, these two social media megastars, and they started calling each other out, trash talking, as they do. At the time, white collar boxing was a big trend. So they decided, KSI called out the Logan brothers. Logan Paul has a younger brother, Jake Paul, who's no less of an influencer. KSI said, I'd like to fight Jake Paul. So that didn't go down too well with Logan. He decided, no, I've got a bit more experience in this area. I'll fight you. So they had an amateur boxing match and it was declared a draw. This was first contact. A lot of animosity doesn't survive first contact. And that's what happened with these guys. It didn't really survive first contact. A grudging respect started to develop. They started to say nice things about each other, which didn't really accord with this perfect enemy kind of storyline they had. They fought again professionally this time, and the undercard was actually KSI's younger brother and Logan Paul's younger brother. This was declared a win for KSI, but the enmity was over. They were now friends. Logan Paul invites him on his podcast, Impulsive, and suddenly a massive friendship develops. How does this relate to Prime, you might be thinking? These are just two influencers I don't care about. Well, because these guys combined their personal brands. They took everything they had built over 10 or 15 years, and they came together with a company called Congo Brands to launch Prime. And this came completely out of the blue. January 2022, these guys come together on Instagram Live and they say, we are launching a product called Prime Hydration. Now I'm going to show you a few growth milestones in this Prime story, and I'm going to go through them quickly, but I'm going to provide support and context after. Some of these numbers are eye-watering. And I mean, the growth numbers and the revenue numbers genuinely are incredible. But I want you to always think, these guys didn't come overnight from this. They basically built an influencer brand, combined it together, took a product, brought it to market quickly, and this is what happened. January 2022, Prime is launched in the US on Instagram Live. Immediately, there's a huge demand for it in the US. The supplier, the bottler Refresco, can't keep up with the demand. So there's a stop in supply, which causes this huge run on it. We'll talk about that in a minute, but the launch, talk about hype. This launch went crazy. Queues outside stores, bottles going for huge prices online, just real proper mania. In June 2022, they launched in the UK, where KSI took the European operations. He came back to Watford and they launched in the UK. Massive queues outside Aldi and Asda. Huge stunts, social media stunts by the guys. And again, they couldn't keep up with demand. So Prime started to get bartered in the schoolyard. Kids wanted to have a bottle of Prime in their hand. It was a cult status symbol. And again, we're seeing this huge hype coming straight away. But this hype actually translated to sales. But December 2022, Prime reached $250 million in sales. Just think about that number for a minute. These guys, yes, had a big audience, close to 50 million YouTube followers together, Instagram followers, tens of millions, TikTok. But they sold $250 million worth of a product that had no history and had absolutely no reputation before this. This is pretty incredible when you think about it. Another brand under Congo Brands called Alani Nutrition did 228 million in its first year. So I think Congo Brands deserves a webinar at some stage. I got to figure out what these guys are doing. February 2023, Prime hits $1.2 billion. Again, huge jump from 250 million. Absolutely massive sales. That launch, I just want you to have a look at this quote. When Prime launched, it was put at $250 a bottle. It was actually on resale for almost $1,500 due to the lack of demand. It became so popular, UK retailers put security stickers on bottles to deter theft. In Ireland, I talked to parents whose kids were buying Prime, and that's what Brian will cover around. Who's a real purchaser of Prime? A lot of parents were buying this for their kids, and it started to get to €10 bottle, €15 bottle. It was the case that a lot of small grocery stores and small retailers and convenience stores were not putting it on the shelves. They were putting it behind the till. You had to go in and almost in a whisper, like some illicit, period where you're trying to get some illicit drugs. Have you got Prime? And they'd go, yeah, just give me a second. And they go behind, open the till, open the locked little fridge behind and get the Prime out and charge whatever they want. This was the mania that came out with Prime. This was the craziness and the hype that came out. And this was also in the US. So it's just worth remembering the kind of hype cycle that came from Prime was a huge part of what they did. And this was fueled by the marketing strategies that Logan Paul and KSI brought to the table. The biggest one being influencer and celebrity endorsement. So this, not only were the founders of this company influencers and social media celebrities, but they managed to secure deals with huge sporting and entertainment organizations and individual athletes that just got them into stratospheric growth in 2023. We'll have a look at a few of those people now in a minute. Their social media and digital marketing expertise, they grew up on social media. These guys basically were made by social media. They knew how to leverage new channels. They jumped on Instagram Live. They jumped on stories, TikTok. They made really, really good use of this stuff. And finally, product innovation. They innovated the products to a degree. It's probably strong to say innovation, but they brought in new product lines over the last couple of years that helped with growth. When we talk about celebrity endorsement, if you go to the Prime website now, they have a partners page. This is only a small selection of the partners that Prime have. They are basically the drink of UFC, WWE, Arsenal Football Club, Bayern Munich, FC Barcelona. Basketball, we got the Lakers, we got the Dodgers, we've got individual athletes like Kevin Durant, Patrick Mahomes, and even international rugby, the South African player Cheslin Colby. Cody Rhodes in the WWE is one of their ambassadors. Across all of these sports and all of these organizations, they have built these partnerships. They bring out specific bottles relating to those partnerships. I have a bottle right here. This is the WWE bottle that Prime brought out. Now, it was really hard to get this, to be honest. I had to get it on Amazon. As I'll talk about later, Prime is hard to get now, not because everyone wants it, but because nobody wants it. And that's where we've come to with this story. So influencer and celebrity endorsement, a massive boost to them. Social media marketing, you have to give credit to Logan Paul and KSI here. Constant social media content, trending hashtags, engaging videos, Q&As, live interactions, stunts. They did a stunt in the UK where they got a whole crowd of people to throw Prime bottles at them. The thing went crazy, it went viral, had something like 300,000 views in the first hour. These guys leveraged social media marketing to a degree that influencers don't generally leverage. This all fed into the hype machine. This all built more demand, more awareness, and it built more of a cult following for Prime. So it meant more kids wanted this in their hands. More parents were getting abuse from their kids for not getting it for them. And again, it fueled the demand and grew it up. Finally, product innovation. Prime launched Prime Hydration in 2022, which is the bottle that I just showed you, but they rolled out Prime Energy Drink in 2023, and more recently, Prime Hydration Sticks. Now, the Prime Energy Drink is the one that is going to get them in trouble, which we will talk about. So that was a whistle-stop tour. I'm going to take a little break, just relax for a second. I'm not going to hand over to Brian. I mean, I'm just going to take a breather because that was a lot. So feel a bit dehydrated, so I'm just gonna take a little
boost, a little Prime boost.
That's not great. That is not great. Still, if it hydrates me, it's done its job. Okay, here we are. They're at the top of the hill. These guys have gone from getting in boxing matches and putting their heads together and punching the faces off each other to being business partners with Congo brands. They've launched this product. They've done 1.2 billion in sales. Everything's going great. But as Brian said when we were talking about this before, when you get to the top of the hill, everybody wants to get your place. You've got a target on your back. Everyone's coming after you. I call this next section combination punches. I call the first section punching above their weight. This time, the punches rained in and they rained in fast. Starting in June last year, Chuck Schumer, the senator, US senator in New York, came out and this got huge press coverage. He urged the Food and Drugs Administration to investigate the high caffeine content in Prime Energy. He rang the bell. This was a moral panic. A lot of people called it a moral panic because actually the caffeine content was within FDA limits. But actually, when you hear about maybe the content, you might understand. This was the first bell that was rung on Prime publicly, that they had a product that may not be safe for kids. Close to 70% of KSI's and Logan Paul's audience are males under 24. This target audience, a lot of these people were having their parents buy the product. As soon as these articles come out that Prime is not safe, you can imagine the effect it has on the parents. In July, in Canada, Prime got banned Health Canada issued a recall on all of it because they exceeded their caffeine content of 180 milligrams. Now, how much caffeine is in a Prime can? There's 200 milligrams of caffeine in a can of Prime. For context, in a can of Red Bull, there's 60 milligrams. And people think of Red Bull as, you know, this is the one that gives you wings. This is the one that you have a can of Red Bull, you go crazy. 60 milligrams, 200 in Prime. Monster, which I've always thought is the worst, 160 milligrams. Prime is 200. That's what led to this. This was certainly something that they did not think about. It's one thing to be the market leader in a brand. It's not a good thing to be the market leader in caffeine content, but that's what they did. And this is what happened. A lawsuit came in California in August that talked about forever chemicals, PFAs. So independent chemical analyses revealed these forever chemicals in Prime. Logan Paul came out and issued, well, it's probably a weak statement saying they're all within levels. Don't worry about it. Again, these reputational assaults are hitting them. These counter punches, these combinations are hitting them, and they don't have the ability to withstand it. From August to December 2023, across Europe, there's bans in schools, there's bans in European countries, and as far as New Zealand, Prime is banned from being sold. Finally, up to today, there are 2 new lawsuits now that they're dealing with. A lawsuit from the Olympic Committee, where the Olympic Committee is suing them for trademark infringement, as they created a bottle much like this one, but they did it for the Olympics for Kevin Durant, the US basketball player. And they mentioned the trademark terms Olympian and US team or Team USA. And so they're being sued. And finally, their bottling manufacturer is suing them for lost income. Now that demand has come down, they're in a bit of trouble. Here's the numbers. And these are only from the UK. We don't have numbers from the US, but revenue has fallen 50% year over year. So in the quarter 2024 versus the first quarter of last year, revenue is 12.8 million, down from 26.8 million. Now, I think that's still a pretty good revenue, given that but let's just call it what it is. There does seem to be a severe drop off in demand and associated revenue. And now we're actually seeing photos of Prime drinks on clearance, bargain bins. Places can't get rid of them, and the demand isn't there, so a lot of retailers aren't even stocking them. In Ireland, I actually went around places trying to get bottles of Prime for this. I used to drink Prime when I was out. I used to get a bottle every now and again. It was stocked in my local Super Value up here. They don't stock it anymore. All the supermarkets don't stock it anymore, but you can find it if you're interested, in Centra, somewhere in Clondalkin, I believe, in Dublin, for any of the Irish people on this. Prime is hard to get, not because people want it, but it's because the demand is tanked. They're in trouble. They may not be out for good, but they're certainly in trouble. And these are the kind of headlines we're seeing now. Is the party over? Prime's going into the bargain bin. All of these cases coming against Prime, the bottling giant, they had signed a 3-year deal. I think it was 55 million per year they had to buy. When demand stopped, they pulled out of the deal. And the Refresco, who manufactured their bottle, had designed a custom production plant for them, and they can't make any other product with it. So they're suing them for lost income. So this is where we are today. And it starts to get the idea that I kind of want to get across from all of this is that this hype machine I talked about throughout this story is they built a huge hype machine from their personal brands, really are built on hype. They built the machine to drive the sales at the start. But as Andrea Hernandez in Fortune magazine says, a brand cannot live on hype alone, and the hype alone is not going to build the brand. There's foundations missing from this brand. And Brian is going to talk a little bit about the blind spots that brands face and need to address, but also how they relate directly to Prime. Brian, shall I run the deck, or would you like to take it over?
You can run the deck. No worries. I'll give you cues to go to future slides.
Amazing. Thank you.
Honor, by the way. And
you're welcome.
To quote the great Rocky Balboa, it's not about how hard you get hit. It's about how hard you get hit and keep moving forward. And I think in this story, Prime Energy, Prime Hydration, the brand of Prime, we're not here to knock it. We're not here to say that it's going to fail. We're not even here to predict it. The goal of this webinar is to get into some practical applications of what you can do to identify blind spots. And why that's so important is because for anybody that's driven a car, you're on the interstate, you're changing lanes. If you're not checking over your shoulder, you're not doing a quick glance, there could be a car directly in your blind spot. That could be catastrophic. And with brands, there's a lot of things that are happening now, specifically with Prime Energy, but also in the social media landscape. There used to be a power dynamic 10, 15 years ago where the employer, the organization, the company had all the power. They could control the narrative. They could buy off individuals. They could find ways to change information. That is not the case anymore. Social media has created visibility like we've never seen, unprecedented levels for people to go on, besmirch, beguile, rip into your brand like never before. You can go to a restaurant, leave that restaurant, or even while you're in the restaurant having a cold bowl of soup, you could be writing a Google review and it could be nasty. There's really no filters on that, but it's about how people respond. So part of these blind spots that we're going to help you do is I'm going to give you 5 of them that we like to focus on. If you can get these 5 right, you will remain protected. You will be able to build a timeless brand. From those stories, I'll then relate those back to Prime and the 3 things that Prime really suffered from and how they could potentially recover back. I love this quote because this speaks directly to kind of a philosophy I have around 4-wall syndrome. 4-wall syndrome is something that I think any leader running a company, really any individual, if you think about only what's happening inside of your 4 walls and you're never looking on beyond the horizon, the hardest question to answer is what is wrong when you think everything is right. If you can have some level of ignorance and some level of, maybe it's narcissism, maybe it's confidence, whatever it is, if you think that what you're doing is better than everyone else, that is when people start to infringe upon. And so what I reckon happened, and I theorize, both with Logan Paul and KSI, they're confident individuals, right? Good looking guys, super fit. They're in the sports world. They have a following. They constantly have people coming after them with positivity. They probably thought, oh my goodness, we've experienced so much success. We're good. We got this all figured out. We have Patrick Mahomes in our corner. We have Barcelona in our corner. We are the best. And the problem is that when you're pounding your chest and you're sitting at the top of the hill, as Connor mentioned, the trajectory and parabola of success, it is human nature that we are going to go after the folks that have what we don't have. It's a very kind of evil, nefarious thing in our lives, but it's a reality. We saw it happen with Michael Jordan, right? When Michael Jordan reached his peak, the reason why he retired in the middle of his career after winning and winning and winning and being a dominant force is because he just couldn't take all of the negative pressure and saying, you know what, I don't need to do this. I show up every single day for my fan base. But we saw articles coming out about his gambling. We saw them reframe the way his father passed away. Just too much for a human being to handle. Now, when you're a brand, that's also going to happen. Because if you talk to any 23-year-old who's drinking Prime Energy and they can see the money that people are making, they naturally want that. And so going into some of these examples, the first we'll talk about is the importance of reviews, testimony, public opinion. For everyone on this webinar, you're probably going to see this and go, yeah, Bri, obviously reviews matter. I hear you. But we have 22 clients. And of those clients, virtually none of them think about the importance of reviews preemptively. Responding to them is important as well. But testimony, public opinion, being able to go out and say, okay, where do we live on review platforms? There's Google reviews. If we're enterprise business to business, maybe it's G2 or Gartner Peer Insights. It's understanding ways where people are talking about us. Social media could be post to post. It could be engagement. But when you think about getting your foundation right, this is so important. The example and visual I have to the right here is a company called Freshpet. Now, what we're noticing with pet parents, I'll call them pet parents because they no longer own dogs and cats. They're children as part of the family. And dogs have moved from backyard to bedroom. And what's changed with that is their diet has changed. Their nutritional supplements have changed. The way people think about pets is completely transformed in the last 2 decades. Now, Freshpet came with a genius, I would say ingenious idea to have fresh pet food that's human grade, chilled, kept in a refrigerator, and served not like normal kibble, not dry, not loaded with preservatives. And to be able to pull this off, they said, listen, for every store that carries us, we will pay the trade, the slotting, all the fees to get coolers inside the store. We'll take care of all the logistics. All you have to do is just allow us to kind of brand a cooler and keep this product in. They launched to market with 2 different things. One that's in that like Jimmy Dean sausage wrap. They call it the Chub. And the other is a bag that was resealable. Now, this was human grade food, right? So peas, carrots, chicken, beef, turkey, etc. But when you open up that bag and you serve the food within 4 days, if you're not sealing that bag and you're throwing it in the fridge, it's uncovered, allowing moisture to get in. What's going to happen is it's going to get moldy. And that's natural. If you did that with a chicken dish in your fridge that you were eating, it's natural. The problem is that Freshpet did not understand the gravity of that issue. They did not understand the education vehicles that need to go in to teach people how to feed. And so what ended up happening is all those pet parents that found mold in their food, they went on an onslaught. There was negative reviews, negative testimony, and they effectively created the first 3 searches in Google were mold-related landing pages and mold-related reviews and forums. That onslaught, now remember, a branded search, when someone searches Freshpet, the first 3 searches on Google, which we know the top spot is obviously the key, was negative. So if you're someone that's considering an expensive product, fresh pet food, you then see this. How do you recover from this? So I conveniently was working on the brand at the time, and we said, listen, this is not the end. We believe in our products so much. We know that we have to address these. We have to be clear, take ownership and accountability, but we need to open up things. 1-800 number, a hotline to receive calls and field those calls 24/7. Second, going head on to these pet parents and having sit-down conversations with them, treating them one-to-one, not one-to-many. That personalization coming into this, that's the biggest difference with Prime, is that Prime is not looking at some of these critiques and saying, listen, there's validity in these. Answering when someone says you have heavy chemicals in the plastic in your bottles, saying we use allowable limits, other people are doing it too, is not a good answer. That does not make people and parents feel confident in the product. And so with Freshpet, the way we're able to do this, we took search engine optimization. We took a huge effort. We went on the positivity. We also created a product selector that allowed individuals to understand how to feed and the education mechanisms. And we treated it like human food, right? Human food gets moldy. I think we've all had blueberries in our fridge that 7 days go by and they're moldy. You got to throw them out. These are natural things that came to be, but it was the response. Good news is Freshpet recovered. Freshpet is now a publicly traded company. They're, trading at over $150 a share. They control the entire supply chain for other natural pet food companies. And we got a lot of happy pet parents because now they understand the right way to feed, and they understand that it wasn't a product issue as much as it was a usability issue. But those negative reviews, if you go back in time and search it, there was a recovery mechanism. So first blind spot is getting what people are saying in public opinion on your side. And when it's not on your side, you have to address it. Next slide. Next blind spot is not investing in credibility. Example here in the visual is Dove Body Wash. Dove has done incredible things in the marketing landscape. They launched the Dove Real Beauty campaign, which was an award-winning campaign that they still reference on. Dove Real Beauty was about taking authentic individuals, not supermodels, not individuals that are unattainable. They took real everyday human beings that were using the product and featuring them in large-scale campaigns. That was an element of credibility because it connected in the heartstrings. But the real credibility is 1/5 of their budget was dedicated towards what's called medical marketing. Medical marketing is getting dermatologists, doctors, medical doctors to stand in your corner and say, this product is amazing. This product is good for your skin. There is not abrasive chemicals in it. And where Dove also got this idea, they were first to do this, is they had a baby shampoo and a baby soap that was the #1 trusted brand for babies. If you don't think that that's going to influence and sway moms and dads, you're crazy, right? Now, they invested a large majority of those dollars, but that wasn't in highfalutin TV campaigns. That wasn't in fun creative. That was in the baseline understanding that, hey, these people are great. It's going to a party, leaving that party, and everyone at that party being able to speak on your behalf of how great you are. And when you don't invest in that credibility, you find yourself in a place that Prime Energy's in, where people are coming after you now and talking about your bottling practices, talking about your business practices. This is something that they could think to themselves, wait, if we can get some scientists on board to talk about Prime hydration and how good that is for the body, that's going to start swaying public opinion. If they could start laying out an action plan to say, hey, here's how we're planning on changing our bottling to remove the chemicals from our plastics, and have someone sign off on that. Let's say it's an engineering team. It goes so far. Another story, if anyone chews Trident gum in the US, 4 out of 5 dentists recommend Trident gum. So much to the point where if you replace brushing with chewing Trident gum, it actually keeps the efficacy of your teeth. When people hear that, you can imagine people going, wait, I could just chew gum and not have to worry about brushing after my lunch. Awesome. And so that 4 out of 5 dentists recommended still is in their claim set today, 25 years later. Next one. So neglecting brand evangelists, love her, hate her, despise her, whatever you want to say about her. Every single person knows who Kim Kardashian is. I think there was a brand sentiment analysis. The two people, it was the three people actually. It was Kim Kardashian, Jennifer Aniston, and Taylor Swift. If you would say those names, 95% of the people in the world can picture what that person looks like. Crazy levels of awareness. But when you neglect brand evangelists, you find yourself in kind of a sticky situation. The positive side of this is there was a small cosmetic brand that knew that Kim Kardashian could be their chance to fame. And so they were following up cold emails, outreach, talking to her publicists, managers, and they were trying so hard to crack the code that is the Kardashians. And eventually what happened is Kim heard about this cosmetic product from one of her friends, was using it as a skincare product for moisturizing. And she used it organically and brought it up on Keeping Up with the Kardashians. When that moment happened, within minutes, the site was crashed because individuals were going from Keeping Up with the Kardashians to go and buy this product. That's unreal. That's unreal time and awareness. But why I bring that up is because in our everyday brands that we run, we're noticing that, let's say you're a software as a service and you have a small audience of users that we'll call power users or evangelists. These are the folks that time in, day out, are using your product. They love it. They're the ones speaking and hanging from the rafters saying you have to use this. Use those individuals. Reach out to those folks on a one-on-one. An Amazon gift card, a Starbucks gift card goes a really long way. Hey, we want to give you something in return. We just want a few minutes of your time. Number one, to thank you. But number two, can you help us understand, how did you hear about us? What do you love about the product? Share with them what's in the roadmap. Share with them what's in the innovation roadmap so they could sign off and say, listen, I don't care about that. I don't see value here. And so the idea of an evangelist becomes the notion of, when I have someone that I appreciate, show those individuals the appreciation. Gary Vaynerchuk is a really good example of a content creator, influencer. He understood that his style was a little bit abrasive. He swears a lot in his content. He's a little bit rougher on the edges, mostly wears hats, stubble, doesn't shave, doesn't look like the conventional executive. However, he knew that if he could nurture his audience and his message was very strong, he would focus on that audience and those people would feel loved. And what's powerful about that is Gary Vee has built a following that now his message is about kindness. He's a futurist, about innovation. He's touched every industry. And the reason why is because he would go to the small pockets of evangelists and say, listen, how am I helping you build your business? What content am I doing that you're loving? And so the idea of why Prime has gotten to this place now, the neglect to these folks that who is drinking the product and who has the highest level of demand, they weren't talking to them. They didn't get into the mind of the buyer. Next slide. So this gets into this idea of not knowing who your true purchaser is. For all the gamers out there, Xbox Live, PlayStation Network, these two things are major businesses. Why are they? Because they're monthly subscriptions that give you a conduit to be able to play online with your friends. Anybody that's a gamer, headsets on, you escape the world, you could connect with your friends all over the world. Doesn't matter your time zones, doesn't matter what it is. Xbox Live and PlayStation Network both missed a huge opportunity to market to who their true buyer is, because the buyer is the parent. I don't know the percentage directly, but the overwhelming majority of folks that are paying for Xbox Live subscriptions for people under 25 are the parent. You know, anecdotally, one of my mentors, her son was using Xbox Live and didn't log in for a year. And she was being hit with that subscription every single month. And one day we're all getting dinner and I brought up Xbox Live and her mother was like, Raf, are you still using that? And he wasn't. And ironically enough, he was like, oh, mom, I don't need it. You could cancel that. And that's to the point where he was the original persuader to go ahead and buy it. But Microsoft Xbox Live hasn't focused at all on marketing around what they're doing for anti-bullying, what they're doing for inclusivity, all the education mechanisms that are included, future deals and promos for savings. These are things that a parent really cares about when they're losing their kid in the digital sphere for hours. I point off to my left because that's where my Xbox is. But when you know your true buyer and you market to them and you build trust and credibility, that's where this whole idea with Prime came. If their audience, as Connor mentioned, is less than 24, 25 years old, I think it was 23, 18 to 23, Connor. If they're in that mecca of 18 to 23, there's only so much Venmo, debit cards, cash that they have, right? The person buying the cases of them is the household, head of household. And so if they're feeling like there's too much caffeine, if they're feeling like it's poisonous, if they're feeling like these things don't add up, you're gonna have a real trouble. So how do you learn who the buyer is? Well, last webinar, we talked about segmentation. Knowing who your buyer is getting in touch. Get in touch with those evangelists. Understand who has your demand. The analytics is simple in trying to find out who's purchasing, especially when you can buy online. Go to the next slide. And then lastly, I think this is probably the most important thing in business that I can profess to anybody is not continually validating your product market fit. Me personally, I've worked with startups that have been so wed to the product and so in love with their idea that they've never validated that there's a market opportunity for this. The issue is with that is you could have the greatest product in the world. If no one's going to use it, you will be out of business. Rule number one of any founder, don't run out of money. And how do you get money? You transact. And so the product market fit, really interesting brand I've been watching in the US. It's a brand called JSX. JSS charters private jets, but private jets that can hold 20 to 25 individuals. And what they've done is the founder of the business said there is a market out there of individuals that do not like going to the airport. They don't like TSA. They don't like security. They certainly don't like getting to the airport 2 to 3 hours beforehand or running the risk of an hour and getting delayed, whatever. But there's also a market of people that want to fly in luxury and want to feel like business class. And to do that, JSX started these private jets that they found a loophole in the Aviation Commission to allow them to charter jets directly on one part of the runway outside of a terminal, outside of a gate. So when you show up, you're actually circumventing the system. Whether or not this is safe for TSA, travel, guidelines, whatever, these are not what I'm covering. What I'm covering is they knew their product market fit so well, they knew their audience so well, that they developed a model that played exactly to those strengths. The founder, I think, said he spent thousands of hours with lawyers and his own time evaluating contracts, loopholes, et cetera. And they built a bulletproof model that's doing really well in the US. Senators are coming for them. Other businesses are coming for them. Every airline is coming for them, but they know that they can confidently nestle their way into product market fit. The other side of the coin, a lot of the brands we work with are businesses selling to other businesses. AI is, yes, going to help you sell and create new emails. It's going to help you repeat your message. It's going to help you do a lot of these things. But what AI is not going to do is determine whether or not a demand and buying signal is there. And what it's also not going to do is, if you don't test the willingness to buy, you can't trust your own instinct that people are going to want it. You got to test some willingness to buy. There's a lot of tactics to do it. And I think what Prime didn't continually do is they didn't understand and say, okay, if the market is going this direction, how are we going to be prepared for the folks that might use us as a supplement? Or for the folks that once we get endorsement, how are we going to find a way to partner with colleges and universities around sporting events? How are we going to find a way to get long-standing demand? Because there's only so much that an individual person could drink. Even if Connor and I both love the product, how much Prime Energy can we really drink in the long list of things that we probably drink with seltzers and waters, et cetera? And so part of what they need to do to recover as well is, where do we ultimately fit and where can we focus our energy? Next slide. So the three ones that apply back to Prime, I have mentioned in each of the five, but I want to talk about the three that I think are really the ones driving kind of success/failure. You go to the next slide, Connor. So what is our market reputation? If you're a new brand, I mean, Prime is less than 3 years old. The market reputation is what's happening in front of you. If you don't have a crisis or PR response plan to when things go wrong, it's very difficult because your reputation can go away in the snap once negative reviews go. We also live in a culture, unfortunately, with trolls. I mean, if you watch any YouTube video now, the majority of comments are trolls hiding behind a keyboard. We have a very unhappy society, generally speaking. You have to be prepared for the individuals that would rather not even try the product and just slam Logan Paul or slam KSI just based on envy. And so when you think of controversy and backlash, if you don't have a strong foundation in place, and you don't have years of things to draw experiences from, you have to be able to be proactive in terms of what can go wrong. And that's why I think when you invest in things like medical marketing or credibility, when you invest with the right influencers who can tell a good story, that's going to give you practical application to go ahead and say, how do I protect myself in this? And reviews and testimony and reputation also teach you a lot about what might be missing. So if you're getting slammed with lawsuits about high levels of caffeine, right? Maybe you think about altering your formulation so you could add in L-theanine, which helps your body absorb caffeine more. So less of a crash, less of jitters. You could change your formulation and say, let's respond to the reputation and let's build a new positive one. The best rappers, the best influencers, the best celebrities when they've been hit with a scandal or hit with something that besmirches their character, the best ones own it, right? And they come back and they make a redemption tour and they say, listen, I've been canceled, rightfully so. I was a major, major, terrible person. And here's what I did. And here was a huge blind spot in my character. And I think when brands do that and they do it authentically, not getting a statement, right? Not reading off a kind of a robotic way of doing it, the same way everyone has, it's going to a small pocket. And what I'd recommend Prime to do is have a massive panel where you invite a whole range of folks. Invite the parents who are buying it, invite some kids, invite the folks who are at launch events. Just do a presser and just say, you know what, guys, we're going to take questions from everyday users. You were selected randomly. Talk through it. Because I would hearken to think that those conversations are going to show KSI and Logan Paul in a much more positive light. Next slide. Who's the real purchaser? Mentioned this a few times, but it's not just the parents, right? When you think of who the real purchaser is, inside of Prime, if someone's a fan of Patrick Mahomes, someone's a fan of Kevin Durant, how they're consuming their content, how they're looking up to them, those are individuals that are role models. The real purchaser, when you get outside of consumables and outside of consumer packaged goods, could be a whole range of individuals. The advice I would give on this practical tip is understand where your sweet spot is and focus on that. If you know who you're going after, don't try to appeal to the masses and appeal to everyone. Identify your total addressable market and identify the people you want to go after. Because when you know who your market is, it doesn't allow you to kind of over-index on features and over-index on all the things you want to include. It allows you to be hyper-focused and say, this is the person that I want. Because it's almost like being in a relationship with someone. You're on your first few dates and you're sitting across from them and the conversation feels forced and it feels uncomfortable and you're questioning, like, are we just not a fit? Am I doing something wrong? The reality is, like, not everybody's for everybody. It's likely nothing they're doing wrong, nothing you're doing wrong. You might just not be a fit. And so once you identify who that person is, you can create an inelasticness to your pricing. And so again, I mentioned safety concerns. When safety concerns are kind of at play, great opportunity for feedback. Next slide. And this, I think, is the last one. We see a lot of conversations come to us on a weekly basis where people are like, I need more leads. I want to use you guys for paid media and I want returns in a week. And I think the difficulty of that is, number one, everything is time, everything is patience. But if you don't understand your true reach as well, like, how much is my dollar going to get me? How small or big is my audience? Understanding true reach with Logan and KSI, when you have a total of 50 million subscribers, those are individuals who are getting notified about your content. That's not even counting all the folks who know them, like them, have positive sentiment. So over the course of 15 years, they were building up this awareness that I think every brand needs to think about and say, when we're in a competitive space, how many people can we foreseeably actually get in front of? Because comparing yourself to other brands that are growing 3 to 4 times faster than you, if you don't actually know what reach and what awareness metrics, and just doing a simple awareness analysis to say how many people know who we are. And you could do Google surveys where they'll interrupt videos on YouTube and you can get people to ask and say, have you heard of this brand? Doing simple awareness studies will help you understand how much money you might need to spend to get the returns you want. And so the last bit here is around longevity. I think what Prime needs to do now is, yes, their sales are plummeting. Yes, they're ending up in bargain bins. They've lost the confidence of a distributor. A distributor is someone who takes that product, puts it onto their run because they think they can sell it and take a markup. When you lose the confidence of distributors, right? They don't care about Kevin Durant, Patrick Mahomes, WWE, Cody Rhodes. A distributor cares about their bottom line. And I think how Prime can recover is to say, okay, now that we've driven all this awareness at the top, we need to think about who is on the ground actually selling and delivering our products. And that's a really good way to start building back some longevity, because they definitely can recover. Next slide. And so we will now ask. Most people don't ask Q&A. I think in this case, we'd really like some questions and answers, because we'll leave it up to this group now that you've heard the full story or a segment of the story. Is Prime Energy a success or failure? We'd love to hear questions. Connor, anything to add? Anything that was missed?
Yeah. But while people, you can throw your question or your comment in on the Q&A session there. Success or failure, yes or no, and why, if you want to go ahead in it. But there is an anonymous question already in, and actually you've answered some of this already, Brian, which is great. But if you are an advisor now to Congo Brands and Logan Paul KSI, what would your advice be to them now, to repair the damage and gain back some of the market that they've lost?
Do you want to jump in on that, or you want me to jump in?
I think, yeah,
Sure.
you'd kind of taken this already. So I think, yeah, go for it.
Sure. I think the first thing is to understand how bad is it. Okay. The first thing to do is assess, okay, when we're losing 50% of our sales in the United Kingdom, we know that that is a significant number. That's not a slow drip off. That is effectively a landslide. So to understand, we're in a situation now where demand and sales are low. That's a big challenge. The second thing is to understand how bad is it. So if you start doing Google alerts, or you can scrub Google to see how many outlets have picked up certain stories. Connor's slide where he had all the little thought bubbles. If you've ever seen Formula One Drive to Survive, where they have the little tweet and it goes, and it has a little communication message. Understanding how far does this go? How many trolls are out there? How are we being mentioned? There are AI platforms that are out there that allow you to look at sentiment analysis across the board. And if we can see that the problem is really, really bad, issuing a statement is not going to solve that. What I would recommend they do is do what they do best, which is create content. They should create a series where they connect with their individuals and audience, and they create a series of videos where they start addressing this stuff in a fun, humorous, yet serious tone, but they got to stay true to who they are, right? And maybe what they do is they box a character of themselves, and they have this big character, which is public opinion. And on one side is prime hydration, and on one side is public opinion. And just doing it in a way where they can address and talk to some of this stuff in an entertaining way. But yeah, first is I would assess how bad the situation is. Seems pretty bad. Second is I would identify what's true to our core and we can recover. And the last is identifying different ways of, okay, if the narrative is all these things, what can we invest in research and development, in credibility, in areas to kind of reverse some of this narrative? Same way that we did with Freshpet.
Love it. Yeah, I would add to that, going back to one of your points earlier about being everything, all things to everyone. My advice to them would be go narrow at this point, because if you look at, I watched, preparing for this, I watched a ton of interviews, a ton of YouTube videos of Logan Paul interviewed about Prime and how the genesis of Prime came out and how he thought up the logo and all this stuff. One of the things he mentioned was that he's claimed he saw this huge hole in the market for a hydration product like Prime. It doesn't really exist. Gatorade and Powerade are monsters in this market. There wasn't a hole in the market at all, really, for this product. And the other thing he mentioned was that they didn't just want this to be targeted towards athletes and fitness enthusiasts. They wanted it to be for doctors and students and medical people. So in a sense, they went broad. They opened up the product to everybody. And what actually transpired in real terms is that the product reached the people they could reach, and then the hype cycle died down, and those people are just off back consuming Gatorade or Powerade or Monster, whatever they were consuming before this came along. So I would say, to back up what you said earlier, they need to actually figure out their product market fit. They need to actually find an audience for this product. Maybe reformulate the product, certainly reformulate the energy drink. If you know that the Canadian limit is 180 and you just are sticking with 200 out of stubbornness or for whatever, like, that's just stupidity. Get that under the thing. So you, at least now it's on shelves in Canada. Now it's on the shelf in Europe. To me, those kind of things, you're getting clear signals from the market that you're banned because of this thing. Maybe change that thing. So I would say get tighter on your product market fit. These guys have, as Brian said, these guys have built up this huge audience. They have the ability to turn this around, but they need the help of people that aren't just built on hype. They need the medical marketing. They need to get people on their team that can formulate a product. And so they can actually, in a sense, if not a rebrand, they certainly need a revision of who they are and who they appeal to. That's what I would say. We have another question there, Brian. What are some tools or tips out there that you would recommend for companies to use and help identify blind spots? That's an
It's a really, really good question. So the first tool that I think is a sleeper, it doesn't often get talked about, is a tool called canvas.ai. So canvs.ai. Years ago, I actually met the founder of Canvas, because what they were doing is, long before TikTok, Instagram, etc., on Twitter, Twitter was the area where, now X, of course, but Twitter was one of the tools that people would watch, like the Oscars or award shows or events that were live and in real time, and they'd be taking to Twitter to kind of talk through things. That habit still kind of happens, but now it's across the board, right? Where things become an instant meme, as an example. Canvas.ai scrubbed all of that, and they would say, okay, let's look for keywords, mentions, anything that relates to the Oscars as an example, and let's scan all of that. Let's see what's positive, negative, neutral, and let's see what elements are out there. Reason why it was so valuable, they started to get into the TV space, and they started looking at shows. When a show would drop the first episode, they would say, what is all the fodder that's going on for the rest of the day and during that time, so that they can report back to large scale companies and say, hey, here's how this episode performed, which helped for pilots, et cetera. So Canvas.ai is a good one. I think even just something simple like Google Alerts and Google Trends, you could go into Google Search Console, and you could identify how much is actually being talked about that's outside of your control. It's another really good one. HubSpot, we love HubSpot in terms of being able to do sentiment analysis specific to your campaigns once you get campaigns out in the wild. I think it is tough depending. So what are some tools and tips? I think the biggest tip that I think about for blind spots first is go to every review platform that you possibly can where you might be present. And if you're not there yet, go there, right? So we worked with a few enterprise companies, one specifically in education technology, and all of their competitors were on Gartner Peer Insights, on G2, which are two credibility builders. It allows individuals to anonymously write reviews. You have to create your account to be found. They didn't even create their accounts. So very, very simple, straightforward task is create the account, at least control the narrative to the degree that you can. But if you're a services professional or you're an agency and you're a HubSpot partner and you're not controlling your directory listing and you're not controlling your Google business profile and you're not controlling all this stuff, that to me is like rule number one, control the narrative. Don Draper said, if you don't like the conversation, walk away. But if you don't like the conversation, you could also change it. I think that's a powerful one. Those would be a few that I'd say come up for me. Connor, anything to add that you like?
No, not much. Definitely, like I suppose, like you said, from a real time thing, there's lots of good social listening platforms out there that you can use to see what the real time conversation is around your brand. It depends on the vertical. Some brands have to dive a hell of a lot deeper to know what people are talking about. There's a lot of those conversations are happening on dark social. They're happening, there might be people talking about them on WhatsApp more. They're talking about them in public forums. But definitely, I've seen companies ignore reviews and credibility to their detriment. I had a client about 10 years ago that were in the delivery area. They were a delivery provider, and the reviews were so bad that they just decided it's completely, we can't do anything about it now. It's irrevocable. We're just going to let them get worse and worse and worse. And I just think, you've given up on your brand at that point. You either need to shut up shop or do some serious soul searching. You have to, as much as possible, if you're getting negative attention, you have to address it in a positive way. You have to address it in a resolution focused way so that people see that you're committed to doing something about it. That, as Brian said, you're not reading from a teleprompter or a script. Find the conversations, get yourself involved in the conversations, and get people on your team that have strategic experience in these areas. Don't expect an influencer to know how to run a brand.
Yeah. And one other tip too, before we get to Eugene's question, is the idea of what is your crisis plan? A lot of folks plan for a crisis during a crisis, and that's probably the riskiest bet to do. Hiring a PR professional, whether independent, small agency, to really hearken this idea of build me a plan. If this happens, this is where I believe we can be exposed, and help other individuals give you an external thought. The issue is that most PR companies want to get you mentions and want to get you placements and want to get you awareness, but really planning for the crisis ahead of time. Because the whole idea, like I think of Boeing, whenever I think of crisis now, I think of Boeing because they have whistleblowers. There's some nefarious things going on in the wild, stories that are being picked up, door flying off mid-flight. There's all these quality issues. Boeing didn't have a good crisis plan. They had the very standard conventional CEO is going to come on, give a very conventional kind of block pivot, give the generic answers. And people were like, dude, we're not doing that. Now, the issue with Boeing is that people still have to fly and people are still flying. So there's no boycotting going on. But I bring that up because if you could think about a crisis plan and a recovery plan, For instance, what do we say if we get a negative review? That's a basic one. Most people go, oh, geez, we're getting a lot of guff because we changed our pricing. No idea what to say. Think about that beforehand, before you change your price. What are we
Yeah.
going to say when we change our framework? And so being able to plan that and have those roundtable discussions and role play a bit where people can actually come after you in your own company, right? Put your hat on and become a hater, become a troll. What would you say? So Eugene's question, hopefully that helped. Eugene's question is, can Prime go the path to be recommended by doctors or sciences? If they fix their issue, it'd be weird with Logan to market it after their fail, or after their fail, yes. This is exactly the time, in my opinion, to get the credibility boosts, because Logan right now doesn't have anything to point to that says, hey, by the way, we understand, but take a look at this. This is the reason why we formulated it this way. This is what happens to your body. If they had individuals and doctors that can look into the product and work with them to change the formulation, that could be the win. It's less about going the inauthentic route and having a scientist come back and be like, well, 200 milligrams of caffeine can do this for your brain. That is going to come off as being pedantic or pandering. If they had somebody work with them and say, okay, we're now going to work with this team, back to the 4 out of 5 dentists recommend try it. If they work with this team, now they can invest in the science, the R&D, and also maybe with the bottling manufacturer, instead of just taking the lawsuit on the chin or fighting that lawsuit, maybe they can work with them and say, listen, we understand that you've put in this manufacturing line. Let's work together to get a small payment out, but we want to come back to this production line. We want to regenerate that demand. Let us help you, just to not manage the lawsuit with just fighting it to get it thrown out. I think that's the key. But no, I think Logan would actually come out on top, because Impulsive is having salacious conversations every week. They just had Trump on their podcast as well. Like, for a while, it was the #1 podcast in the world for a certain genre. I think now is the time to have people come to fruition and have him come back and be like, you know what? I took for granted how important branding and product is. I'm going to put my branding hat on. I'm going to learn, because he was selling Maverick merch and he understands the power of demand generation, but I don't think he put his product hat on. And if he brings on the right experts to do it, I think he'll be golden. We got time for one more if anyone has any questions. I love questions.
Questions are great. Any more questions? You got to type really fast. We've got 3 minutes. And before that question is typed, if that question is typed, just to say a big thank you for joining us, all of you wonderful people. This is a new format for us. This is our second webinar. We do have our third webinar coming up in October. It's going to be all about the Air Jordan phenomenon and Nike's brand evolution. I cannot wait for this one. We are going to be sending out the recording from this. We're going to be sending out slides. This has been a hell of a lot of fun. I hope we get a last question, because I feel like we need to finish with a bit of panache. But if we don't, I'm very, very grateful for having this time. And thank you, Brian, for your time on it as well. If you had to put a hat on, if you had to have get a crystal ball out, what would you say Prime's going to look like in 6 months?
In 6 months, I think it's going to look largely the same as it is right now. But I think in a year and a half, depending on the action plan they take, I really do think they can recover. In terms of my opinion on success or failure, I think it's a huge success. It's a huge success in the idea of how important it is to build an audience and be true to your audience. But to the point you said, you can't live on hype and hype alone. Mr. Beast is running into the same thing. Huge influence, lots of subscribers on YouTube. He started a Mr. Beast burger, sold out in the location. People were craving it, loving it. Mr. Beast knew nothing about burgers. He just wanted to take something he brought to market. But again, hype alone is not enough. And so I think Prime is a huge success, because they were able to negotiate big deals with big names and get in rooms that they probably had no business being in. So I would say that the successes far outweigh the failures. And if I could sit across from Logan Paul and KSI right now, I'd say, guys, listen, let's chat about this, because you guys obviously are winners. You're always going to win. You've proven it now for close to 20 years. But let's talk. Like, let us help identify blind spots. Let's help fix it. But I would say success.
Yeah, I would as well. I would say firstly, it all depends on the goals. If their goal was, let's combine our brands, let's put a product out and make a ton of money, they were a success. And I don't know that their goal was, let's build a sustainable brand for 20 years. Who knows But I think calling it a failure has definitely got a green tinge of envy on top of it. So I would go.
Absolutely.
I'm going to go
1.2
success
billion.
as well.
1.2 billion
Yeah.
is crazy money. Like that's billion with a B. All right. Well,
Yeah.
thank you all for joining. This is amazing. We're trying our best for webinar formats. If you guys want different formats, more engaging slides or content, let us know. I think in the grand scheme of things, our goal is to be out here and deliver value. We love talking about this stuff. So any feedback, always welcome. Thank you, Larissa, for the congratulations. Thank you, Larissa, for saying it'll be a success. Like the positive energy. Have a great day. Make it a great week.
Thanks, everyone.
Yeah.
Take care.